So it's back to school time now, and although things have been a bit different lately, the question still stands. How did you spend your summer vacation? Welcome to the premiere episode of the Radical Retro Rewind podcast. Thank you so much for giving us a listen and joining us today. Today will be about the 1992 animated film Tiny Toon Adventures, How I Spent My Summer Vacation. I remember watching this movie as a kid and basically destroying the tape from rewatching it so many times. Today we will revisit it 28 years later with today's special guest. I want to begin by saying this man and his podcast, Brunch with the Halliwells, and Movie Geek and Proud, along with his co-host Sean, have been two of my favorite podcasters and the inspiration for me beginning this journey. Please welcome the very talented Rob to the show.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Ryan.
You're so welcome.
That was nice. No, I'm very honored to be chosen to be in your pilot episode of your podcast. I'm so glad you're doing this.
His podcast, Brunch with the Halliwells, has been my favorite for, what is it, about 2 years now you've been doing it?
Yeah. So we are recapping the original Charm series that premiered back in 98. And I'm showing my friend Sean the series for the very first time. So you get the perspective of a newcomer and a fanatic who watches it over and over again any chance he gets. And right now we are recapping season 5, which in the span of 2 years. Yes. So it's been going on a little about 2 years. And we're coming up on our 100th recap episode. So
Yes,
I'm very excited for that. Movie Geek and Proud is basically just a general movie review podcast. But the difference between mine versus a lot of others that are out there is that I like to promote that there are no such thing as a guilty pleasure film. I think that you should be able to enjoy the taste that you like in film, whether you like something or hate something, despite what everybody else thinks. And a guilty pleasure film is just something that for some reason is not made for you to enjoy, but you have a guilty pleasure for it. And no, if you like the movie, then you like the movie. It's not a guilty pleasure. You don't have to make any justifications as to, if you like a movie or not. So with that being said, I review a lot of my weird taste, as well as visit old favorites and also watch films that I have never seen before that honestly the whole world has. So you get a little bit of difference with those two, but I enjoy podcasting. It's fun.
And tell everyone about the shelf, your movie shelf that you are weeding down to.
So I have a metaphoric movies shelf because I have such a big collection. So as I'm reviewing my movies, from my collection on the show, I now have to rewatch and also rate them a 4 or above out of 5 in order for it to stay on the shelf, or metaphorically get rid of it, to see exactly like which movies would I truly have in my collection if I had really thought through, instead of buying every single movie that came out on DVD when I was a kid.
Because we didn't know at that point. We've always felt probably that if we didn't grab these DVDs at the time, we were never going to see these movies again.
Exactly. With streaming services and everything, it's easy to just go on and just watch a movie that you may have in your collection. And I am a collector. I enjoyed having a big giant shelf full of DVD cases and all that jazz. But it's like, did I really need to buy it? Just because I saw it and I didn't hate it, I needed to own it. So it's like, I wonder how many of these movies I actually would truly want on my shelf, and others that I can just give away. And it sucks too, because there are some movies that I absolutely adore, but they didn't reach that 4-point mark. So technically they're gone. And but again, it makes me analyze and watch movies a little bit better and have more of a wide-eyed view of what it is I'm watching, instead of just pure entertainment. So
is there a film that you found that you were shocked that didn't make the shelf?
So some of the films that I was very surprised that did not make my list, and this is usually because they scored like a 3.5 instead of a 4. Spice World did not make it on my list. I know.
That's just a classic of camp.
I know. Mortal Kombat did not make it on my list. Yeah.
Another movie.
It didn't get a 4. There are some others on here here like American Pie.
Now, American Pie, do you think it's just because it was so overhyped at the point when it came out? It was just pop culture phenomenon, and we were just thinking, oh, this is such a great movie. But now,
Well, I mean, it really comes down to the rating system that I have, and today this movie would not work. You know, there's a lot of problems with how sexualized everything is on that in that movie, and also just some of the jokes and all that good stuff just is nostalgic for me, and I get it and I remember my memories with it. But today, showing this movie to just any old body, it may not have such a huge impact, and that comes into play when I'm ranking them. So unfortunately, this did not make it. As far as like replay value, I don't watch the movie a lot, but I just know that at the time when I bought it, I loved it so much, you know?
now Spice World, you mentioning that, I definitely have to rewatch that film. It's been so long.
Yeah.
Let's dive into some retro pop news, shall we? So going into this, researching this, I could not believe that Hulu is making new episodes of the Animaniacs with the original cast and the original style. And this is coming out this November 20th on Hulu.
That's amazing. I love this idea, and the fact that they were able to get the original cast back is just awesome. Yeah, so I definitely applaud that, and I will be checking it out. I'm very curious to see what they do with it. Do you think they're going to keep the same animation style, or is it just going to look like every other cartoon that we've been watching lately? Ugh.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. Like, I was talking to Rob the other day through text about the new Thundercat and how the animation nowadays is just so different. But with them, it seems like they're actually keeping to everything original. They're even going to include Pinky and the Brain and segments like that. So it seems like it just picked up 20, 30 years later.
Yeah.
Which is what you really want, I feel like, in a show. I feel like how many shows do we wish just came back with the original cast?
X-Men definitely plans on doing the same thing. They're getting their voice cast back and also keeping the same animation, but of course updating it and making it look a little bit more crisp. But yes, we're getting the same animated original series back.
That's going to be on Disney Plus for anyone interested. I know the creator was definitely super excited to continue that storyline. And we all need a little Storm having a panic attack moment again with her amazing calling on storms while she's screaming. I feel like we just need that in 2020 to save it at this moment. Other geeky news. Now, I know Rob is not a big Star Wars fan, but Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back is coming back in theaters for a limited time for the 40th anniversary of this film. It's coming out, isn't that crazy? September 25th, it's coming out in selected theaters. This seems to be a trend lately, especially with drive-in movie theaters now coming back due to COVID. And what do you think about these old films getting the light of day again? I mean, Star Wars definitely doesn't need this. We know it's everywhere, but...
Well, I mean, I think it's a nice little homage and a respect to the film when you show these movies in theaters again. There is a heavy level of experience when you are at a theater versus watching it at home. I mean, if you're being practical, yes, watching it at home is definitely better. But there's an experience that you get when you see it on the big screen and watching it in big auditorium. And I think that for people who grew up or maybe miss their opportunity to experience a movie like Empire Strike Back in a theater, will now be able to do that instead of just being able to watch it on DVD for the first time when they're younger. You know, now they can go to the movies and watch it as their parents did, you know? So I think it's a great idea to bring in older titles like that sometime.
You're right. Nothing beats that theater experience. Well, this is going to put you on the spot, but is there a film that you would love to see in the theaters for the first time that you didn't get a chance to, or it came out before you were born? Spice World, right? No.
Honestly, I mean, well, so here's the thing. I can pick my favorite movie, which is Clue, but I've seen that in theaters like a gazillion times.
Special showings, they like an anniversary or...
Exactly. So, I mean, I'm used to that, but I'm a big horror nut. I would love to see some of the original horror films back in the 80s and 90s to be revisited. And sometimes they do those too. But to think of one that I guess I haven't seen in theaters would be Ninja Turtles. Turtles.
The original?
The original. So as far back as I can remember, I think that was my literal first experience at a movie theater that I can remember, is watching the Ninja Turtles movie with my uncle. And it was just like on a whim. We were just out driving, and then he was like, "Do you want to go see a movie?" And I'm trying to remember if I watched a movie before that. I can't think of one. So I would love to see the Ninja Turtles again on screen.
Oh, I love that, especially with your uncle. Double wonderful memory.
Yeah.
Wow. I would like to see that movie again as well. It's been years that I've actually seen it.
Yeah.
And question for Rob. Now, the 1994 classic series Sister Sister just began streaming on Netflix. And Mr. Rob has watched all 6 seasons of this show. He binge watched it. Does it hold up, Rob?
Oh God. Well, first, you're making me look like I have no life whatsoever. So
it took him weeks. I just want to say that.
Well, to be fair, so I work from home, and it's easy to kind of have stuff in the background to watch while you're working. So with that being said, I was able to get through the series because I had never finished it. And yes, it definitely holds up. I love watching this show, and a big part of that is Jackée Harry.
Yes.
If anybody, knows her growing up, she's just an amazing actress. She's freaking hilarious. And yeah, it was really fun to be able to watch Tia and Tamara do their twin thing back in the day, especially with Batman from Immature being there as Roger. And yeah, I mean, it was fun to relive the series, and it was still funny. I enjoyed it. Some of the later years, again, I had never seen before, so most of it was for the first time. So I got a lot out of it.
Go home, Roger.
Now I'm on the series Girlfriends that was on WBUPN, I think. Yeah, I believe UPN. And yeah, that's been a fun show. I had never seen one episode of that, so I'm watching that right now. And yeah, it's been a good time.
I remember watching some episodes when Buffy, I think, moved to UPN. Maybe it was on UPN, because I feel like when Buffy moved to UPN, then I remember seeing Girlfriends. But that's great. And it seems like both casts have amazing guest stars all the time.
Oh, yes.
That you were showing me, like, the amount of people that just show up on this show is just fantastic. It is a 90s buffet, I feel like, of amazing.
Yeah.
To stick with the theme of this week's episode, I wanted to know what Rob's favorite cartoons were growing up.
Well,
We grew up in the golden age, I feel like, of cartoons. So there's millions and trillions and so many great ones. But the ones that really stand out for you that were...
Well, as far as cartoons go, the original X-Men animated series, Beetlejuice, I really loved watching Beetlejuice on Saturdays.
Yes.
I was more of a Disney person versus Nickelodeon. And I loved both channels, but when it came to cartoons, I always ventured on the Disney side of things. So I missed a lot of the Nickelodeon sitcoms. Recess is amazing.
Yes.
I love Recess. Ninja Turtles, again, the animated series, and Inspector Gadget. But
God, classic.
Yeah, but one little gem that I would like to mention that I watched, it was only like 2 seasons, and it was in and out really quickly, but I freaking loved it because I never thought they would do anything like this ever. They made a animated series of Tales from the Crypt.
Yes! Oh my god, I remember this. They even made dolls for it at the time for kids, like Crypt Keeper dolls.
I loved this show so much. They brought the original voice of the Crypt Keeper, John Kaser, back on to narrate it. And every episode had, like a child moral lesson to learn in the episode. So, I mean, they obviously talk kid stuff if you really listen. But just the sheer horror of it and having it be animated and on Saturday morning and not rated R. Like, I loved it. I loved all of it. And I would record every episode on VHS and just replay it all the time. Now you can actually find all of them on YouTube.
I love YouTube. YouTube is fantastic for lost old shows that you can't seem to find. Not all of them, but a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
And, speaking of Crypt Keeper and Beetlejuice, we got a lot of horror-themed cartoons back in the day for ourselves.
Yes, we did. Cartoon and live-action sitcoms. There were tons of them. Yeah, I totally agree. What were
But
some ones that you like?
definitely Beetlejuice. I actually preferred that almost over the movie
Oh,
as a kid.
really? Interesting.
I really loved that dynamic with Lydia and Beetlejuice, that they were friends and he wasn't out to, haunt her and get her family out of the house. They were just friends, and she would go into
It
the
might have been Netherworld.
netherworld, maybe? The
Netherworld.
netherworld?
Yeah.
And her whole just summoning, the whole sequence when she's summoning Beetlejuice, that is fantastic. And I would love to talk about that show one day
Hmm.
on here. Definitely X-Men, Spider-Man. Do you remember The Tick as well, that lasted for one season? It might have been because it was on Fox, so it wasn't
Yeah,
a Disney, but
I watched one or two episodes, but I didn't grab on to the Tick. But yeah, I remember it being a really good show. I mean, people would bring it up and talk about it with me. So, I mean, there's definitely a fan base out there for it. But yeah, I didn't catch on to that one.
it's definitely nichey. It was very, I probably didn't even understand half the stuff that was going on there, like adult-wise. I feel like Sailor Moon, of course, and probably All Real Monsters was another one that stood out for me.
Oh, I remember that show. Very good. That very cliche classic scream that you can hear on every movie or TV show out there. They use the
Yes.
exact same scream from Ah Real Monsters.
Question of the night: Tiny Toons or Animaniacs?
So
Which
for
did you
me,
prefer?
I'm gonna go with Animaniacs. Actually, I know that defeats the purpose of the topic of our
No, not
of
at
your
all.
short,
Not at all. Not at
but
all.
Animaniacs, I think, had more of a sort of pop culture reference because a lot of it took place on the studio, which is surrounded by Hollywood and all these actors. So the references were great. You got something new with each intro because they would say something different. It was modern and caught up. I laughed out loud more with Animaniacs, and the songs were legendary. I bought the CDs. I
Did
bought
they
the
have
CDs
CDs?
of Animaniacs.
Wow.
Yeah, all of those songs that you got to hear about the states and the countries. And I mean, they had Bernadette Peters on there. Of course, they
Oh,
had a CD.
wow. Wow, I forgot that they had her. My God, Broadway royalty here.
So, I mean, I love Tiny Toons, but yeah, if I had to choose, it would be Animaniac.
Did you love Slappy the Squirrel? I feel like that was my favorite character, whacking people with her purse.
I will say that with Slappy, it was the clever joke segment that you can put with a lot of other things, but in their segment they went to the Who concert and they did that Who joke. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
And she wanted to know the name of the band, and the band's name was Who, and she kept saying Who, the name of the band, Who, the band on stage, Who. Yeah, I just love it's so funny, so good.
They're smart writers. I mean, the both show, I feel like, had smart tongue-in-cheek, broke the fourth wall, but I can totally see Animaniacs. They were hysterical. That's probably why it's coming back in Tiny Toons, is just rotting on Hulu with old episodes.
So are you choosing Tiny Toons over Animaniacs, or?
I feel like just because I watched this movie so many times and it was so important to me as a kid, I just have to pick Tiny Toons. Plus Buster and Babs, I feel like they were the coolest cartoon characters. Everything they did, they were impressions, and they just seemed like the cool kids, and I was never that, so maybe I'm living through Cartoon Rabbit.
I will give you that. The Tiny Toons were very relatable from a kid to kid perspective, for sure. So I get that.
All right, another question, Rob, for you. Do you have any summer rituals or memories that really stand out for you? This movie is all about one summer that for some of the characters are downright torturous. But do you have any happy summer memories, some things that you had to do or something that made it feel like summer to you?
So the biggest memory that I can think of was when I lived in Washington State, in the area that I was in. I would love to go to the community swimming pool that our town had, and I would do that every summer. I think it was like $2 to $3 to get in every time you wanted to go in, and it was just filled with people and laughter and all that. But it was just always such nice summers there. And then for some reason, I would come home just completely worn out, time for a nap. But I would do it by watching. This is so strange, and I
can't wait.
I don't know how this started, but I would come home, I would get a sandwich, and then I would watch Problem Child Part 2 Not the
Wow,
first
out of
one.
all the movies.
I know. Well, because, at the time I was just starting to record a lot of stuff on VHS, and that was one of the biggest movies that I had on VHS to watch over and over again. For some reason, that movie relaxed me when I came home from swimming. And so I would watch that movie and then end up like taking a nap. And yeah, so I would say, as far as a routine or ritual would go, yeah, it would be going to the swimming pool with some friends.
I love that. I love that Problem Child. Thank you for bringing that up. Another movie that I have forgotten. I forgot that there was, like 3 maybe?
I think they went up to 4, but I could be
Oh
wrong.
my lord.
I did see part
Wow.
3, but yeah, as many times as I am a guest on your show, you're going to get a lot of 90s and 80s stuff from out of me. So
I just want to tell the audience at this point, this is why, one of the reasons I love Rob. He is so knowledgeable about, I feel like anything that I can remember, Rob knows, and I appreciate that so much because there's so many things that are obscure to a lot of people, and Rob knows. I'll just drop one. S Club 7, anybody? Right? Is there crickets going on here? Rob knew that, and I am obsessed with them.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing, like I try on my show is that whatever stuff that you like, you're not alone. Like there's somebody out there that likes the same stuff as you. So don't feel like you have like horrible taste. There's just somebody's out there who just knows it just like you. So
And it's Rob at this point, just so everyone knows it's Rob. And road trips. Have you ever been on a road trip? I mean, it seems like our poor plucky duck gets entangled on this road trip with Hampton the pig's family, which is one of the most hysterical road trips I've ever seen, I feel like.
Well, my family, it kind of comes and goes. As far as a full-on road trip, though, I did go on one. We took a road trip to Disneyland.
Ooh.
From Washington State to California, and there were like maybe 4 or 5 cars separated between the whole family, and I rode with 3 of my other cousins. So this is what sucked about this particular road trip. Not to say that I didn't have a good time. It was a wonderful time. It was adventurous and stuff, and we made it there, I think, in the span of 2 days. There was a point where our driver had to rest, but it was the fact that because there were so many of us, they filled every single car with a person for each space. So it's like in the back seat there are 3 of us. To be in a road trip and literally crammed in a 3-person seat, like I don't want to be on a road trip where you are literally fitting every single seat, and it wasn't like we got a rotation on who sat in the front and got more leg room. It was the driver's son. So I was stuck in the back with 2 other people and just completely crammed. There's just no way to do a road trip with like no room. So
Isn't that the truth?
But other than that, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I would say that is one of the road trips I did as a child.
I'm so glad that you actually had one. I feel like I'm living through this movie. Road trips. I feel like the closest thing I've done to a road trip isn't even one. Was a few years ago we went to visit my aunt in Arizona, and we drove 6 hours, Guy and I, to the Grand Canyon. That alone was an experience.
And
but
Guy
that's the closest,
is
I feel like. Guy is my partner, for everyone listening, of many years. And we did that, and that's the closest I feel like I've gone on one. But you're right, I can totally picture your family. The kids always get the short end. You small, go in the back. Your legs are just cramped in between other people. So you actually did, and then you ended up at Disneyland.
Yeah, that was fun.
Another thing that this movie has in common is the road trip is leading to a park called Happy World Land.
Happy World Land, Happy World Land, where the fun doesn't stop at only $80 a pop in beautiful Happy World Land.
And with that, why not let's get into the plot of this movie, Rob?
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. Plot of this movie. We have quite a few little things going on. Like we were mentioning, one of the plots is Hampton and his crazy family going on a road trip to Happy World Land, and poor Plucky Duck wants to go with them, unknowing of really what he's in store for. We also get a plot with Buster and Babs having a water gun fight. Basically, to get even on Buster, Babs Bunny just floods Acme Acres, breaking the dam down, and she floods the whole entire town, and they end up in the bayou with possum people and alligator women. That's one of the major plots. We also get a little side plot with what is her name? Fifi LaFume, the skunk, searching for her Johnny Pugh, her idol, her movie star crush. And really, the last plot is Miss Elmira, the animal-loving, squeezing, torturing girl that she is. She goes to a zoo and basically tortures all the animals there. At one point, skins a cheetah and wears the fur as a one-piece pajama set. That's one of the highlights of this movie.
So just real quick, in particular to that very scene, I remember from the trailer and also rewatching it, that specific part always stood out to me because I remember in the trailer, she has it on and she's like, "Ooh, looking good, baby." I was like, love that part so much.
I'm so glad you remember that. That's one of the quotes that I didn't realize I still say to today. I didn't remember it came from this, but...
Well, we can't forget, I think her name is Shirley.
Shirley the Loon. Yes, the psychic duck.
Yes, the psychic duck, and that annoying chicken who tries to go to the movies. Oh, when we get to that part, I have some words about him, but... I
do love that whole entire scene, how they set it up. It's summer. She's doing this, basically like a psychic booth where she's doing chakras and auras. She's doing that, and this chicken, what is his name?
Forget his name at the moment. I'd have to look him up.
I have a list of name here for characters.
No.
Foulmouth.
Is it Foulmouth?
Got it. It's Foulmouth.
It's Foulmouth. Okay. So Shirley with Foulmouth. So I like that Foulmouth was very, not persistent, but, he really tried to win a date with her, and, he didn't quit after just one try. He, tried again and tried to get a date with her. But when he finally did, he became, for me, the most hated character in all of universe. Just the way that he was acting in this theater, I take going to the movies very seriously. And the way that he was just telling the plot of the movie, he was super loud.
That was the worst.
And I was just like, oh my God, how dare you? Because I was actually, well, first of all, I forgot like most of what I saw. So some of it was a bit of a still like a first watch for me, and I was like, oh, that's cute, he finally got the date, that's so cute. And then he gets in them, and then it shows that he's obviously a horrible date and she shouldn't have went on in the first place. But he was annoying. It was so annoying watching him do what he did, and then he finally gets kicked out, thank God. But God, he was so freaking annoying. But in this scene, they do show a ton of cameos who are also watching the same movie, which I thought was so funny. I think Cher was in the audience.
Cher was definitely one of the audience. Let's see.
Like
We actually
Meryl Streep, Pee Wee Herman, Woody Allen, Jack Nicholson. I think so. I couldn't tell if that was Rosie O'Donnell or Roseanne.
It was, you know what it was? I for some reason I knew this as a kid because I always remembered her doing that singing at the ball game, so terrible. But yeah, it was Roseanne. We also had Arsenio Hall was one of the. That's just shows you the date that this is. Back in the 90s, he was one of the cameos. They did a Little Mermaid spoof at one point.
Yes. We
have Jay Leno and his chin
being
wheeled in separately from his face. Terrible. Barbara Walters and Oprah were another.
So that was Barbara Walters. Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I remember seeing Rambo. And
Rambo, yes. We got Superman was another for very quick. E.T. was another cameo.
There was this, the face of Mad TV comics.
Oh, yes.
His face ended up on a Sphinx on there.
Picturing him with his freckles.
Yeah. So yeah, I saw him. That was pretty cool. But yeah, you definitely caught a lot of the references that I got. Carson and McMahon, Johnny Carson,
Johnny
McMahon,
Carson, yes.
yeah, and Letterman, and yeah, so those are pretty good. They also did that whole Hawaii Five-O theme song kind of in there too to throw the throwback to the old. So I mean, yeah, Tiny Toons was definitely a very referenced, pop culture thing as well. And with this movie aside, like I definitely watched this series tons and tons of times, and it was always fun to sort of match the smaller miniature versions to their Looney Tunes counterparts. It's like, oh, who is he representing?
Yes.
So that was always a real fun thing to just see a smaller version of them. But yeah, this movie with this whole summer vacation thing, I actually think for the most part, I think it's a really clever idea for a movie like this, aside from the series, and just have everybody kind of doing their thing during one summer of their lives. Yeah, it's a nice idea. I think you mentioned something to me off record about the fact that this movie is like a combination of episodes.
Yes, a matter of fact, thank you, Rob, for mentioning that. Little trivia, and don't mind us, we're just going to go through different parts of the movie. It's not going to be a full rundown of all the scenes. It's just more of our, oh my God, what the hell is this kind of review. The VHS tape was one of the highest selling videos in the US at the time. Get this, it ranked number 12 of sales during April 1992. And then weeks later, in June 1992, it went to 5th. So this movie sold extremely well on VHS tape. And then they ended up doing it as 4 separate episodes for the main show at one point. I guess after it sold all these copies, mine included. So before we get past the theater scene, I just wanted to bring up another thing to see if you remembered. Do you remember the sound test that they did during this movie where it just blasts the audience with loud boom and it says the audience is now deaf? At the time, in the movies, they would do these sound tests to prove that their sound system was amazing, and it was so loud.
The THX, the THX audio, and they would play that before every movie with that Dolby sound. Yeah, the audience is now deaf for sure because it was loud.
That was hysterical. I said that is definitely one for the adults. So okay, Babs and Buster. So they literally float down to. Is this supposed to be the bayou somewhere? This is supposed
somewhere
to be like
in the South. Yeah, somewhere in the South. It's very like rugged, a little poor, maybe, definitely heavy country. And they have to deal with some people they're not really used to in their, suburban, Acme Acres.
This was supposed to be like, I'm sure, like a Deliverance reference. I'm sure with the possums playing the banjo in the cabin in the woods kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we start off with that. They, of course, get away from the possums. And then they end up with a group of alligators, a father alligator and his 3 daughters. And they want, all 3 of his daughters want to marry pantless. They keep saying this, pantless Buster. Like, I love that is, they're calling attention to it. You're pantless.
We must introduce ourselves.
Look, he's got no pants.
Something that we would never probably mention nowadays in our cartoons, or who the hell knows anymore.
Right. Yeah. No, I did notice, was sort of paying attention to who wore pants versus who didn't. I think Plucky was another character who didn't wear pants, but Hampton wore overalls. So yeah, it's just.
What is that? Does that mean like they literally are they supposed to automatically think, wow, half these characters are just walking around with their bottoms out?
Well, I mean, yeah, I wish there was some specific theory as to why some of the, like, mostly the boys didn't wear pants versus the girl characters. I the only thing I can think of is that if they are supposedly covered in some kind of fur or feathers and whatnot, then that constitutes as a bottom half, whereas Hampton doesn't have any hair, so he has to wear something. Otherwise, we would be talking about something else today.
Speaking of Hampton and his family, man, this family.
This, I gotta say, is my favorite segment out of all of the movie. I really, really enjoyed Plucky just going through the motions of making it to this amusement park. This family just did everything they possibly could to make this trip horrible, especially because he worked so hard getting in the car.
I feel so bad for him.
Yeah, it was funny too because this family again lived in a world that just does not exist, even in Acme Acres. The thing that stood out to me most is that they wanted to record their speedometer in their car. I think it was like 1 million or something.
Yeah, it was like, yes, I think it was 1 million because I remember, what was it, 99? Yeah, it was 9999.
And so like they record it and then they hit Plucky in the process, but they didn't take the lens cap off, so they didn't get it. And so they're like, no, that's okay. We'll just hit reverse and the speedometer will go backwards. And I'm like, don't you wish you were able to do that with any car? To be able to rewind the speedometer and take back the miles you just used. Like
100%. And I feel like because I watched this so much as a kid, which might explain how I turned out today. But I used to think that was a thing when I was younger because I saw this movie so many times. Like, oh, I didn't know you could reverse and the numbers go down. Oh my God. But that was hysterical.
It was also hilarious to have the dad just hum the song, but the only words he says is "Pop goes the weasel." That's it. That's all you got out of him. I would have gotten so annoyed. But I mean, we have to acknowledge the queen of voiceover, Eddie McClurg.
Great day in the morning. We nearly ran over that poor young man.
Oh, yes.
Like, this woman has the most distinctive voice in all of Hollywood, and like, of course, she has to be involved in a movie like this. If anything, I would say that Hampton's mom was drawn based on her voice. Like, it was not the other way around.
I really do think that fit her, right? I feel like I could see her in that character totally. You took the word right out of my mouth.
Newsflash: a psychotic killer has escaped from the state maximum security prison. The raving maniac is described as a lanky man with scraggly hair and a pasty complexion. When last sighted, the homicidal fiend was wearing a dirty baseball cap, tattered overcoat, and green high tops. Has a psychotic aversion to pork.
Okay, another standout of this road trip with them is the Hitchhiker.
Oh, okay, yeah, you were mentioning the Hitchhiker.
This, from a kid, this scene has always stuck with me. I just love that it is terrifying especially if you were a kid, the way they set this with the radio announcing that there's a maniac on the loose that has an aversion to pork. And then they're just oblivious as poor Plucky is in the back seat and he's pulling out this chainsaw, talking about bacon, pork chops.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be way off because I could be thinking of something else. I remember that there was a psychotic guy who like came over and was a babysitter, and then like on TV they kind of showed like, oh, this guy's really a serial killer, but it turned out that the kids were so misbehaving that they outwitted this scary serial killer guy that was supposedly gonna be like their demise, but it turned out that he was actually the victim in this babysitting situation. And I can't remember if it was Tiny Toons.
That sounds so familiar. I wonder if it's actually the same character that they brought back.
Well, that's the thing. I'm wondering, like, is it the same guy and they just brought him back, or did they use him later? I don't know, but that storyline just like stands out with me. So I just wonder if that was the same guy.
Oh, I definitely need to investigate this because it does sound very familiar.
Yeah.
And anything with that Hitchhiker character, I think is...
Well, if we don't find it on this episode, I'm sure you will cover it on a different one. Yeah, definitely let us know if you find out.
Let's see, what else did this poor guy go through? Oh, Uncle Stinky. This is Hampton's uncle. Doesn't seem to be able to speak like the other characters. He's more of a feral animal. in
Yeah.
that sense. And at one point, he shake Plucky's hand, and I'm assuming it's not supposed to be mud. I think
Well,
he
because
leaves.
it's a lot. So, I mean, I guess we can assume that. I looked at it as mud because I didn't think they would do something like that in a cartoon. But,
But then, you know what? Plucky smells it, and he turns black and white check.
yeah.
Which is another gag they do later where, again, Uncle Stinky is basically sweating, and Plucky thinks it's this beautiful raindrops coming from above because the poor guy is so thirsty throughout this whole movie. And he's drinking basically Uncle Stinky's sweat, and then he also loses his color with that one, which is great.
That was utterly disgusting. I mean, his tongue turning like grayish or something. I mean,
and cracking, just disintegrating from the taste.
It was so gross. But yeah, he had one hell of a road trip, and then come to find out it was only to just take the monorail train around the park and go home. He didn't even get to ride one ride. Now, I love the fact that this family is so unified and together and they love each other and all that jazz. But like for them to unify and agree with the fact of this long road trip just so they have something to look forward to on their next visit is insane.
No, do you think they did that? Because I was rewatching this movie the other day in preparation and with Guy, and he thought it was because they were so cheap that they didn't want to do it. But no, it's because, like you said, they mentioned they didn't want to overwhelm themselves.
Yeah.
Too much fun.
The anticipation of the road trip leading up for next year, they would definitely have a lot to look forward to now that they're so hyped on getting on the ride since they saw what it has. It just sucks they have to wait an entire year to do it.
So does that mean they're going to go back another 3 months and then just ride one of these amazing rides?
Who knows? Yeah, it was crazy. But yeah, that was pretty much my favorite segment. But some other stuff that kind of stood out was how distinctive 90s it was. Like Babs and Buster continuously kept mentioning, oh, this is part of the video. Like literally using the word video. And it's like, yes, they know they are going on VHS and they're going to stay on VHS history forever. Like that was
selling all those copies, evidently. My God.
Yeah, they didn't really have a script to stand the test of time. Like they were like, yes, we're in a video. This is what's happening. And so, yes, this came out in the VHS era.
And also including that one scene with Shirley the Loon with the rollerbladers rolling down the street. And the terminology when the Dizzy Devil basically sheds, I guess, every summer, he said. And Shirley the Loon tells him to spin for the pure joy of spinning or something like that, and he loses all of his hair. He puts a box over himself, and then these rollerbladers that are just out there incorporate the box look. As a matter of fact, it's very in, they say. So just the lingo of that was hysterical as well. So if we can talk about Elmira for a minute again, this is voiced by Cree Summer, who is voice acting royalty.
Very much royalty.
She has done everything. She was Penny from Inspector Gadget. She is Susie Carmichael on the Rugrats. And any other cartoon that you've probably watched?
So I distinctively remember her a lot from those cartoons that you mentioned, but Codename Kid Next Door, she played that sassy little black girl.
Yeah, she did.
Yes, I loved her in this cartoon, and very, very similar to Foxy on Drawn Together. Like those two characters just are literally the same person.
She's so broad, but she gives that same energy, you're right, to the characters. They have that same feeling.
Yeah, she's so good. So good. So yes, great casting with Cree Summer. Cree Summer knows what she's doing.
I mean, she is going strong. Just looking at her now, she really is royalty. She's going strong, and God bless that voice. Mm-hmm. The voice of a childhood.
But yeah, Elmira, just wanting to hug the perfect kitty. And, back then she was like super scary, to watch, to be honest with you. Just having, poor animals. Oh my God, I love Furball, who like literally almost cut off his own tail to get
Was that
away.
not traumatizing?
He took those scissors. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he's thinking about cutting his tail. It was that serious.
That's one of the things I feel like, along with, they had a cigarette in the movie theater, no smoking in the theater, and they were mentioning when Hampton's family was singing the songs, one of them was 99 bottles of non-alcoholic beverage on the wall, and Plucky's like, just say beer. So it's so funny hearing like things that we grew up with, that beer, cigarette, you would never, cat trying to cut his tail off, maybe not anymore.
Yeah, pretty crazy. But her storyline was crazy. Those animals did not stand a chance. She's funny, but I mean, just down to the skull, is just a test. Like, she is just not to be messed with. She's.
Are we to think that in the future, if Tiny Toons came back, like Animaniacs, that she had grown up to be a murderer of some sort? Because don't they start with animals first? Usually psychopaths.
Well, I mean, if they really wanted to get real with this, I don't think she would be alive, because I think she would try and hug just that one wrong animal that like attacks back. But I mean, from the cartoon, it seems that she can take the punches from any animal out there. It's just, I don't see her making it. The woman just really had some issues.
And then the other part was, do you actually remember that she had her own spin-off? I completely forgot about this researching.
Yeah, didn't she join Pinky and the Brain?
Yes,
yeah.
Completely forgot about this.
Yeah.
But then when I read it, I said, oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she was one of those characters that really, I guess, was beloved and spun off on her own.
But you know what's funny, though? I preferred Mindy.
Yes.
Now Mindy is on Animaniacs, so I mean, I'm not saying that, if I had to choose between those, because they're not from the same show.
We already know how you feel about Animaniacs.
But I just love Mindy with her silly puppy. She just is. I just love her. This dog goes through hell on earth to protect her, and she's such a silly puppy. I don't know. I just think her childlike essence, it just screams out more than Elvira. But Elvira is funny. She's very entertaining to watch. What sucked about this cartoon is that we didn't get to see what Mad Max was doing, or Montana Max, excuse me.
Montana Max, right? He didn't
appear in the cartoon, and I actually like when the two of them are together, him and Elmira. Yeah.
They almost were, I guess. Well, first off, I guess they were the only two human characters, really. But I just remember that they were both drawn so unattractively. They have those little doll faces kind of look to them, but squishy.
Yeah.
So you just want to dislike them, but he made like a brief appearance when they, spoiler alert, their whole summer vacation, everyone's vacation basically was either 3 months on the bayou not eating like Babs and Buster on a gondola, or stuck in a car and they have to go back and it's literally the first day of school again. And then at the end you see him just as a cameo, but there's so many other characters, right, that they could have. And I'm surprised Disney Devil, being that Taz was such a popular character from the regular Looney Tunes, didn't get more of a screen time in this movie.
Yeah, Little Roadrunner and Calamity. Calamity wasn't in it as much. They most of them were seen playing volleyball in that one scene at the beach, but I mean, they could only concentrate on so many, and they took the core characters and made stories. So I get it,
Did you notice, speaking of Roadrunners, that the Roadrunner was ran over at one point with a car during this movie?
I probably saw it, but then forgot. Yeah.
I think Hampton's family, again. Wonderful drivers, everybody. Just stay out of the way of this pig family if you ever notice them on the road.
Do you have a favorite character?
I would say Babs, actually. I feel like she almost, and they actually make a joke about it in this movie, but I feel like she's Lucille Ball in a way, because she's always acting and, putting on a performance. And that's why I love in this movie when they're on the riverboat Delta Berg, they're doing like a dinner theater, and she turns into Lucy, and Babs was always my favorite. What about you, Rob?
I go back and forth, and again, I associate them so much with their older counterparts. So I usually would choose because of who I liked in Looney Tunes, but I would have to say Plucky because he just has the best line.
He is I gotta say, he is a close runner-up.
Yeah, so I would probably say Plucky.
Now, at one point, speaking of Plucky, I know we're all over the place, but he mentions that his love, Shirley the Loon, back in Acme Acres might rescue them, but she's going on that date with Foulmouth.
It's a pity date. Shirley's that type of girl. It's a pity date. Yeah. It's like, look, my man's gone for the summer. I can kick it for one movie. It's totally fine. But I mean, Tiny Toons in general, like I said, it really stood the test of time back in the day. You know, as a child, I think I was around fourth or fifth grade, maybe third grade, something like that. And we would have these sort of show and tells in our class. They would pick a person, and then like at the end of the week on a Friday, of course, they would get this full wall of like any pictures and things that they want to share. And then we just spend an hour asking questions to that student. And for some reason, it became a routine. Who is your favorite Tiny Toons character? Out of all the cartoons that were currently out or soon to be coming out, that was something we wanted to know. That was our thing. That was our show. That was the show that was just ours as a kid. And there were just so many characters out there that it's up there with what's your favorite color. And but that's how big this show was. And like, I played the Nintendo game that I loved so much, playing the Nintendo game. I don't remember ever beating it, but I loved playing that game. I loved hearing the theme song. And yeah, Tiny Toons was really good back in the day, especially for a cartoon to come on after school versus on a Saturday morning. It's something to definitely look forward
100%.
to coming home. And so, yeah, the movie was definitely a nice touch because, I don't know, for me, it made me feel a little bit more grown up because, kids were more into TV shows versus movies. And it's like, look at that. Our TV show is getting its own movie just for kids. And yeah, it was a nice thing to do for kids who were so obsessed with Tiny Toons.
I love that story. And I believe there was also a Tiny Toons sports game that I always attempted and could never figure out this game.
I played that. No, that was a lot of fun. I like that one too.
So to sum up this movie, Rob, what would you say to somebody who never saw this film?
Oh my God. Well, I mean, definitely watch it for the nostalgia of it and, reliving a little bit of your childhood. As you get older, certain cartoons don't have that same heavy appeal that you had when you were a kid. And that just comes down to attention span and what it is that you're into as an adult. But, watching an old school 90s cartoon like this, I think this movie still had something to really appreciate and also acknowledge the fact that they were pretty good with, again, keeping it very today at the time. Their references, the stars that they used in their cartoons, they were always up to date, and whoever, was big at the time always showed up on this show. And even though this movie was not as entertaining watching it again because it was just like, whoa, this is very, very kid. I will say that it did remind me of those fun summer times that I had where like a simple water fight was all that you really needed to do to say that you had an amazing summer. And so like, yeah, I can definitely see kids watching this and having fun with it. It was very bright. It's very colorful. All the characters are fun to watch. And I still noticed a little bit of adult humor into it that I think adults can appreciate.
Yes, I feel like that will definitely help someone modern watching it maybe again for the first time in years. I feel like, yes, the adult humor will definitely help a little. It is a little maybe long. I've noticed that there's some parts that I feel like it could have been cut out, but at the same time,
I was really surprised on how long it actually was. You know, I went to go press play and I was like, oh, this movie's that long? Okay, I guess we're really in for it. I mean, they went for it.
When I had to send him this movie, I noticed the length as well after I sent it to him, and I said, oh, crap. I did not realize it was over an hour and 25 minutes without commercials.
Right. Yeah, they went for it on this one. So, I mean...
So we'll say that definitely this is a product of its time. This is a total 90s movie, but it does have references that might go over, like the kids, if they were watching it nowadays, head. But there's so many funny parts that I think that you'll get a kick out of it going back. I want to thank you so much, Rob, for doing this first show with me. Hopefully, Rob will be back to do more episodes with me because, as I stated, I love all of his knowledge. I love that he knows basically everything. I'm going to keep that going as a theme. It's everything Rob. Rob, please tell the lovely people where they can find you online.
Well, first, it was a pleasure being on your pilot episode. Thank you for having me. And yeah, I'll definitely come back whenever you need me. So
that's going to be a lot, everybody. So listen to this beautiful voice, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do.
So yeah, both podcasts can be found on most podcast apps, primarily Apple Podcasts, of course, SoundCloud, Anchor FM. And you can follow us for, sort of updates and news on the show on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter, it's at MGNP Podcast for the Movie Geek and Proud. And for Brunch with the Halliwells, you can find us on Twitter at BWTH Podcast. Definitely check out both shows if you are a huge fan of Charmed or any sort of obscure smaller titles that you may have forgotten or that you liked or watched as a child. We're on Instagram, Movie Geek and Proud, all one word, and Brunch with the Halliwells, all one word. And yeah, thank you for having me, Ryan.
Thank you so much. And I think that the next one that we might do, everybody, might be Are You Afraid of the Dark, for any fans out there. And let me tell you, Rob is an expert with this as well.
God, I am not an expert. I just watch the show so much that I just retain a lot of memory from it, but not an expert. But yes, there's definitely a huge love for that show. So yes, call me when you do that show.
You are in for a treat, people. I am telling you. Again, I want to thank Rob for being here. I want to thank you for listening to me talk about these crazy 90s, 80s, and everything in between. If you are interested with the show, we can be found at Ryan Hunter Studios on Instagram and Radical Retro Podcast on Instagram for the show. Thank you again. I hope everyone had a great time, and we'll see you next time.